Guys, this is the brand new 6S Kraton EXB RTR, and this thing has a ton of updates in it. In this video, we're going to take a look at every one of those updates, compare them to the previous generation parts, and see just what you're getting for your $700. First thing that's been updated is this body. The body is the same, but the paint job is new. I think they did a great job with this paint job. I love the way they're going with these designs. I think these bodies are the best looking bodies in the industry right now. Underneath that is where things are going to get really interesting. We've got a new center brace, updated ESC, new chassis braces, new shock towers, new shocks, new bulkheads, updated links, a new servo saver, and a few bits and pieces that we haven't talked about before. Let's dig in. First thing I want to do is get a closer look at this two-piece tower-to-tower brace. Let's get this body brace off. This body brace does look to be the same as the previous generation, and is still held in with these pins and body clips. As you can see, we've got a nice two-piece tower-to-tower brace. The tubing and the ends do look exactly the same as the previous generation, but having it tied into the center differential here should allow it to be quite a bit stronger. Let's take a closer look at this center differential, as there are other new parts here as well. I'm not the first person to work on this car since it left the factory. Yours will be worked on too. We'll talk about that some more in a little bit. Let's swing these out of the way. And you can see we have a brand new top mount for the center differential. This top mount looks very similar to the previous version. As a matter of fact, I think it's the same piece. They just added the extra mounting for the center brace. Underneath that, we have an updated center differential. This is a limited slip EXB center differential. The spur gear is the same, and basically everything inside is the same. The only real difference is these outdrive cups have been extended. You can see on the previous generation, they're quite a bit shorter. I don't think it's gonna make much difference for the center differential, but for the front and rear differentials, hopefully that's gonna prevent the dog bones from popping out too easily. We'll open this thing up later and take a look inside. To go along with that, we've got a brand new aluminum front mount for the center differential. This looks very similar to the plastic part, just made out of aluminum. That'll help keep this center differential in position and should help prevent these gears from getting stripped out. And here's why it's always good to take a look at your vehicles. Looks like they only got thread lock on 1 out of 2 screws on this one. One more main update on this motor mount is they have updated these screws. They do have the same size head as the previous generation screws, but they do seem to be quite a bit stronger. I've run a couple of these now and I haven't stripped one of them out yet. Now moving toward the front, there's a lot of really exciting stuff going on up here. We've got new shocks, updated shock towers, and the most exciting thing is gonna be this bulkhead. We're gonna pull this bulkhead all the way out and take a close look at it in a minute, but before we do that, let's take a look at one of these updated shock absorbers. First thing to note are these updated shock mounts. These have 4mm studs instead of the old style 3mm screws that went through. These also appear to be a new material, and they've got washers here on the shock towers. These new shocks look really, really nice. They're emulsion style. Which style you prefer really depends on your own personal preference, but emulsion style definitely does work well for bashing. Interestingly, we've got rubber mounts here on the top, and I noticed they're using a metal eye down here on the bottom, which used to be plastic in the previous version. Let's take a closer look at this shock cap. Taking this off, we can see there's an O-ring in here instead of a bladder, and there's a bleeder screw here. There's going to be instructions in the manual on how to properly bleed these, but it's pretty straightforward. We've also got some new pistons in here. These are machined pistons, just like the TLR Typhon pistons. They should be a lot smoother and more consistent with damping. I really like the size of this bleeder screw. Usually they're really, really tiny. I also like the fact that they're using a copper washer here instead of an O-ring. O-rings tend to get deformed, and over time they'll leak. Now that shock's just the beginning on this front end. Let's get this thing stripped down and take a look at everything else that's new. This has the new Firma 150 V2 ESC in it. This ESC had some problems, and I believe Horizon went in and updated all of these ESCs before they sent them out. In a little bit, we're gonna check that firmware version, and then later on, we're gonna make sure that this ESC does not have that previous problem. This has the same EXB upper front hinge mount as before. This front shock tower is pretty much the same as the previous version. Underneath this top plate is one of the most exciting changes they've made, and that is this servo saver. Let's finish taking this out and compare it to the old one. Here's the old servo saver, and here's the new one, and this thing is very different. The Arrma bar is the same, however, the arms on it are way beefier, and the real difference is on this end. This has an aluminum upper piece with a dual spring setup and is a lot stronger than the previous servo saver. Trying to activate this by hand, I can barely move it. As you know, the previous generation servo saver was very weak. It was okay with the stock servo, but of course we upgrade those servos, and once you upgraded the servo, this thing failed pretty quickly. This servo saver looks like it's going to be up to the task of handling bigger servos a lot better. While we're looking at steering, let's take a look at these new steering links. The turnbuckle itself is the same, but these ends are way beefier. You can see this end is quite a bit thicker, a little bit longer, and has this new profile to it. And then on this end, they've really gone to town. It's quite a bit beefier, quite a bit longer, and overall I think it's going to be a lot more durable than the previous generation ones, and these previous ones really weren't that bad. The sway bar end links have also been slightly revised. Rounding out the steering updates are a brand new servo and a 25-tooth servo horn. If you want to see me tear down this servo, take a look at my Big Rock video. I do a complete teardown and review of this servo. Alright guys, the moment you've been waiting for, and I've definitely been waiting for, let's take a look at this new bulkhead. The sway bar cover looks really nice, and they have this new sway bar bushing, which is a much better design than the two little grub screws they used to have. And there she is, guys, one beautiful new aluminum front bulkhead. This thing looks really, really nice. They've included the gasket here on the bottom. This has got an EXB differential in it as well, and that EXB differential does have those updated outdrive cups. They've designed this so it's really easy to take this cover off without it interfering with the A-block. That was a problem on the previous versions. This cover looks like it's really nicely made. That differential fits in there nice and tight. And this is just a standard open style 29mm EXB differential with those new outdrives. And then we can just see the machining that's been done in here. Overall, a really, really nice looking bulkhead. We can see they've got a new plastic ring on this input. This is designed to hold this grub screw in, and I've been seeing them do this kind of thing on a lot of parts on this car. We've got a plastic piece on this servo saver, which is also acting as a thread lock. Let me show you where else they've done that thread lock trick. This is the newly redesigned center brace. The front brace is very similar. The rear brace is held in with two screws, but both of them have these little plastic inserts in them. Those little plastic inserts are not part of the threading, as the aluminum itself is threaded. Those little plastic inserts are just designed as lock nuts, and that's a really interesting design that we're seeing more and more on these vehicles, and that takes the place of having to use thread locker. Most of the back of the truck is very similar to the front of the truck. The main difference is going to be this updated wing mount that uses more screws and has a revised shock tower to accommodate this updated wing mount. I'm really interested to see if this updated wing mount makes a difference, because these things break all the time on the previous version. We've also got those same updated end links, and we've got slightly revised rear hubs. Again, I showed you more about this on the Big Rock video, but it's just slightly thicker right here. Now I've got another interesting hidden update to show you. Arrma didn't change the part number on this heatsink, but as you can see, it's now clamped with a screw instead of that clip they used to use. That should hold this heatsink on a lot tighter. Finally, we need to take a look at this ESC and make sure that it's updated to the latest version. To check that, we're going to need to hook up our V2 Smart Programmer. Now, if you're enjoying this deep dive video where I tear a brand new car apart to show you every bit of it, make sure you get subscribed. That way I know I'm doing the right thing, and I'll make more videos like this. I've also got a really interesting video coming with this car where I'm going to do something that I don't think you've ever seen before. You're not going to want to miss that. All right, let's get this powered up. Now, assuming this has been updated, we'll be able to program this ESC. This programmer would not program the ESC with the original version of the software on it. We can see ESC version was 5.07. That is the updated version, so Horizon did take this apart and they did update this ESC. All right, guys, as you can see, what we're left with is a giant pile of parts. I've got to get this car put back together. In tomorrow's video, we're going to make sure that this ESC programming update fixed the problems with it. Then we're going to take this thing out, take it for a bash, and see if the updates Arrma put in resulted in a better car. While you're waiting for that video, why don't you check out this video?